All of these miracle stories that are documented point to the fact that something's going on that can't be explained.
Exactly. There is a reality beyond what we can see and touch.
All right, Central family, good to see you guys today. Thank you so much for being here with us. Big shout out to our Central Sunrise Mountain and Summerlin and Kingman and Aliante locations. Good to have you guys with us today. And I am super, super excited and honored to introduce to you somebody that I've known for a very long time, have respected for a very, very long time. Incredible author and speaker. And you're going to be blessed today just from hearing all of his insight and research. So let's give a huge, big, warm Central welcome to Lee Strobel. Come on out, Lee. Lee Strobel in the house.
What a great house to be in. This is awesome.
Come on.
This is awesome. I've been away too long from this church. I love this place.
Yeah, Lee, we were trying to think back to when you spoke here last. It's been quite a few years.
It's been a while. It's been a while. I remember it very, very vividly.
Yeah.
And there's just a spirit of God is loose in this place, and it's exciting to me. Yeah, it's awesome. Awesome.
Lee, it's such a privilege to have you here with us, and we've known each other for a long time, but I was just so moved by your latest book of many that you've written, Seeing the Supernatural, which is amazing, by the way, and I've been through it twice now, so I'm hoping some of it sticks, but just kind of going through all of that, tell us a little bit about your story. I know that at one point you were an atheist.
Yeah.
You were a journalist for the Chicago Tribune, an investigative journalist, and God got a hold of your heart and faith opened up, and now you're writing a book called Seeing the Supernatural. How did all that happen?
Yeah, it's quite a journey. I was an atheist for much of my life. My background's in journalism and law, so I tend to be a skeptical person. I lived a very immoral life, very drunken, profane, narcissistic, self-absorbed. What people saw was me winning awards for investigative reporting, but they didn't see the other side, which was me literally drunk in the snow in an alley on Saturday night. So then my wife comes to me one day with the worst news an atheist husband could get. She said, "I've decided to become a Christian." I thought, oh no. First word through my mind, divorce. I was going to walk out.
Wow.
And then I thought maybe I could rescue her from this cult that she's gotten involved in. So
there may be some people here with
who
that
can relate
in their mind
to that,
right now.
So I decided to take my journalism training and my legal training and systematically investigate, is there any credibility to the claims of Jesus? And so I spent 2 years of my life doing that, especially looking at the resurrection of Jesus. He clearly claimed to be the Son of God, but I concluded after 2 years that he not only claimed that, he backed up that claim by returning from the dead. And that's when I became convinced he is who he claimed to be. He is the unique Son of God. I repented of my sin, received Christ, and my values, my character, my morality, my philosophy, my worldview, my parenting, my marriage, all these things over time, God began to change and transform for the good. So it's been an adventure.
Yeah, would you say, for me, I feel like that moment where I finally surrendered my life to Christ, stepped across the line of faith, I look back and I say, my life hasn't been perfect, a lot of problems, a lot of issues, but I would still say that, everything good today in my life, I trace back to that moment.
Oh, no question about it. Some people say they have a rush of emotion when they come to faith. I had the rush of reason. This is true. This is true. The historical data is overwhelming. The evidence from science, cosmology, physics, biochemistry, genetics, it is overwhelming that this is true. And I was just bowled over by that. And then as I grew in my faith, I realized, Jesus, who established that he is who he claimed to be, he was an exorcist. He cast out demons. He believed in angels. He believed in a supernatural realm that went beyond what we can see and touch and put in a test tube. And so that's what I wanted to explore in this book, seeing the supernatural. How do we know? What's the evidence? What's the corroboration that the Bible is telling us the truth? There really is a reality beyond what we can see and touch.
And you capture that so powerfully in so many different sections. There's some anecdotal stories and things, but a lot of the stories you talk about, miracle stories and others, are actually like peer-reviewed in medical journals and unexplained things that people have experienced.
Yeah.
What's like the wildest? Okay, so in working on this book, interviewing people, you went all over the country, talked to all kinds of experts. What's the wildest story?
Oh man, the wildest story.
Like a wildest miracle story,
well,
right?
I love these stories, as you said, of miracles. We went to peer-reviewed medical journals. We went to cases where there are multiple medical researchers who've documented things. So these are real cases. And my favorite one involves a woman named Barbara. Barbara, when she was in high school, was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. And she deteriorated very quickly, hospitalized many times. It got to the point where there was no hope. And she was in hospice waiting to die. They said, next time she gets pneumonia, we're not going to revive her because it's just prolonging the inevitable. She's going to die. So here she is. She's at home. She's in hospice waiting to die. She hadn't walked in 7 years. She was curled up like a pretzel. Her fingertips were touching her wrists. Her feet were extended. One lung was collapsed. The other lung was half filled. She had a tube, as I say, in her throat that was connected to oxygen canisters in the garage so she could breathe. She had tubes because she'd lost control of her bowels. She was virtually blind. All she could see was gray shapes. And somebody said, wait a minute, why don't we ask more people to pray for Barbara? So they called WMBI, which is the Christian radio station in Chicago, and they said, would you please broadcast, ask people to pray for poor Barbara. She's on her deathbed. There's no hope, the doctors say. One doctor said she is the most hopelessly ill patient I have ever encountered. And so they put out the word. We documented that at least 430 people were praying for her because they wrote letters saying, Barbara, I'm praying for you. So get this, on Pentecost Sunday, she's in her room and she had two female relatives who were there who were reading her some of these encouraging letters from people praying for her. And all of a sudden, she hears from the corner of the room where there was nobody, she heard the words, "Get up, my child, and walk." And she yanks the tube out of her throat so she could talk, and she said, God just told me to get up and walk. Go get my parents. And she couldn't wait. She jumped out of bed. Now, I interviewed Barbara, and I said, what was that like? She said, Lee, the first thing I noticed, my feet were flat on the floor. And my feet had been rigidly extended for years, and they were normal. And then, second thing I noticed, my hands came uncurled, and they were normal again. And she said, the third thing I noticed, I could see. And she said, you'd think that'd be the first thing I'd notice. It was the third thing I noticed. Her mother came in, fell to her knees, grabbed her calves and said, your muscle tone is back. She hadn't walked in 7 years. Her legs had atrophied. Her muscles had returned. Her dad came in. They waltzed around the room. Well, it was Pentecost Sunday. They went to a Wesleyan church in Wheaton, Illinois, and they said, let's go to church. There's a service tonight to thank God. So they come into church, and as they come in the back, the pastor is up there, and he says, anybody have any announcements? And Barbara comes walking down the center aisle. Nobody had seen Barbara walk for 7 years. She walks on, and the congregation just spontaneously began singing, Amazing Grace, I once was blind, and now I see. And so...
That's amazing.
Just instantly, her lung was everything. The doctor, she goes the next day to her doctor. He said later, I saw her walking down the corridor toward my office. My first thought was, oh, she died and that's a ghost. Because he said, this is medically impossible. Instantaneously healed from every effect. Her lung returned to normal, her bowels returned to normal, her sight, everything. And she ended up, get this, she ended up marrying a pastor. And they had a little church in Fredericksburg, Virginia. And I got to visit with them and get to know them. And just a remarkable story. Sweetest woman. Just still to this day overwhelmed by what God did in her life.
Well, and your book is filled with these stories, and you wrote another book as well called The Case for Miracles.
That's right.
That's also filled with stories like this.
And it's going to be a motion picture.
That's right, this year, right?
December 15th, if you can mark your calendar. We filmed a movie, and you'll see Barbara in the movie telling her story, and you'll see these people with these peer-reviewed medical journals have documented their instantaneous recovery from hopeless illnesses, and you'll see their stories and hear their stories December 15th in movie theaters around the country.
That's amazing. And your book is filled with stories like these that they challenge the idea that this is all there is.
Yes.
Now there's still a lot of questions, like why was Barbara healed and why wasn't Susan healed over here?
That's right.
Or why has God not answered my prayer?
Yeah.
It's kind of a different series of questions and almost not a different topic, but related. But,
of course, yeah.
But all of these miracle stories that are documented point to the fact that something's going on that can't be explained.
Exactly. There is a reality beyond what we can see and touch.
So you talk about, one of the things in your book that I found fascinating was the research you did on near-death experiences.
Yeah.
And first of all, like how many documented, reviewed near-death experiences
I
have there been?
started to research this. I thought this is a new agey thing. This is not biblical. I thought this is weird. And then what did I discover as I delved into this? There are 900 scholarly articles published in peer-reviewed medical and scientific journals over the last 50 years. This is a very well-researched area of science. A near-death experience is when someone is clinically dead. Often no brain waves, no heartbeat, no respiration. And they're, just as the Bible says, their spirit, their soul separates from their body at clinical death and continues to live on while their physical body is now clinically deceased. And here's the key, people see things and hear things in their spirit that it would be impossible for them to see or hear if they hadn't had an authentic out-of-body experience. And then, in their cases, their body is revived. The paramedics or whoever are able to restart their body, their spirit returns to their body, and they tell these stories that can be checked out that are impossible for them to have seen these things or heard these things if this hadn't been authentic.
Give us a few examples.
Yeah. Well, one of the most famous ones is a woman named Maria, who was a Hispanic migrant worker in the Pacific Northwest. She dies of a heart attack. So here she is in the hospital. She's died. But she says later, I was conscious the whole time. And her spirit had separated from her body, and she was kind of hovering over the doctors and nurses who are frantically trying to save her. And she's observing this, she's watching this, and then her spirit floats up and out of the hospital. But then, after a while, they revive her body. Her spirit returns to her body, and you know what she says? She said, by the way, there's a tennis shoe on the third-story ledge of the hospital. It's a man's tennis shoe. It's left-footed. It's blue. There's a little wear over the little toe, and the shoelace is tucked under the heel. You couldn't see it from anywhere. It's on the roof of the hospital. They go up, and they find it exactly as she had described it. Not only that, but the way she described it, she would have had to have observed it from outside and above the hospital. So her spirit had to be floating, in a sense, on its own from that to get that perspective. Well, that's just one of many cases. One of my favorites involves a little girl, 9-year-old girl named Katie. She drowned in a YMCA swimming pool. Massive brain swelling, no brain waves, no respiration. She didn't have a heartbeat for 20 minutes. They take her to the hospital, and she's clinically dead, but they say, let's keep her body functioning mechanically while we decide what to do. And by God's grace, 3 days later, she recovers fully from this experience. But she says, by the way, I was awake the whole time. And the doctors are skeptical. They said, wait a minute. What do you mean you were awake? She said, I met Jesus. And I saw things. And they said, wait a minute. We'll test this. Here's a piece of paper and a crayon. Draw the emergency room that we took you to when you were dead. She picked up the crayon, drew it exactly as it looked. And then she said, here's the key. She said, and one night, my parents came to visit me, and I followed them home. And she was able to describe what her mother was cooking for dinner that night, chicken and rice, what her brother was doing. He had gone in his room and was playing with a G.I. Joe doll in a Jeep. She described that. She described how her sister was combing the hair of her Barbie doll and singing a specific song. She described where her father was sitting and what he was doing. She described what they were all wearing at that time. Things would be impossible for her to know if she hadn't actually, by her spirit, followed them home that night after they visited her in the hospital. And get this, there are 21 cases. This is a doctoral dissertation of 21 blind people, most of them blind since birth. And yet, during their near-death experience, they were able to see, or they had vision-like perceptions for the first time. So for instance, Vicky Umapeg, 26 years old, blind virtually since birth. She's in a car accident, she's killed. But she said later, I was conscious the whole time. And she said her spirit separated from her body, she's watching the paramedics trying to revive her body. She'd never seen people before. And she looks and she sees birds and she sees trees and she sees other people and she can't believe it. And then they revive her body, her spirit returns to her body, and she's blind again. Doctor said, this is medically impossible. And in all these cases, after their spirit returns to their body, they're blind again. How do you explain that? So there are these inexplicable things involving near-death experience. And here's the key. I interviewed a guy, happened to be a friend of mine for 40 years. He used to serve together as a pastor with me years ago. But he was an analytical guy. He studied personally 1,500 cases of near-death experiences. And he investigated those, and his conclusion, which is documented, I interview him in my book, so there's a whole interview with him. He shows that if you look at what actually takes place during a near-death experience, not how people interpret it, because people with different worldviews can interpret things differently. Set that aside. Just look at what actually takes place during a near-death experience. It is 100% consistent with the teachings of the Bible. That's pretty powerful.
Yeah. For people that are trying to grab a hold to something they can explain, right? I feel like near-death experiences really opens up a whole world of like things you can't explain, but points to the fact that we're more than just, matter.
And can I say not all near-death experiences are pleasant?
Yeah, talk about that.
Howard Storm. Howard Storm was an atheist. Howard was a tenured professor of art at a major secular university, and he went to Paris, France to look at the art. And he died of a heart attack in the hospital. But he said later, I was conscious the whole time. I was standing next to my body, looking at it, and I hear a voice from the corridor saying, hey, Howard, we've been waiting for you. You're supposed to come with us. Come with us. Oh, okay. So Howard follows these people down the corridor, down another corridor, and things start to get dark and foreboding, and they start to get abusive. Howard, you're dragging behind. Come on, keep up. And they start swearing at him and pushing him. And then these demons literally mauled him. He said, I was reduced to roadkill. He said, there's no horror picture that could ever capture the cruelty that they inflicted upon me. And in that moment, he didn't know what to do. He called out to Jesus. He says, save me, Jesus. And an orb of light comes, and Jesus rescues him. And then his body is revived. His spirit returns to his body. As a result, Howard Storm not only renounced his atheism, not only became a Christian, not only resigned his tenured professorship at this secular university, he went to seminary and became a pastor. And today, he's pastor of a tiny little church in the middle of nowhere in Kentucky, just teaching people about Jesus Christ.
It literally scared the hell out of me.
Yeah, it did. I wish I'd put that in.
We're leaving that life behind, people. I'm out. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. No, that's amazing. You talk about a lot of different supernatural things in your book, but one thing that really jumped out to me that I thought was powerful were these dreams that people are having in the Middle East, and this phenomena known as like Jesus dreams.
Yes.
Can you speak to that?
This is amazing. If you look in the Bible, this is consistent with Scripture. There are many instances in both the Old Testament and the New Testament where God uses dreams to further his plans.
Yes.
Well, what we have now in a phenomenon around the world, especially in Muslim countries, especially countries that are closed to the gospel. It's illegal to share the gospel. We have this phenomenon where Muslims are having dreams in which Jesus is appearing to them in their dreams. We've had more Muslims become followers of Jesus Christ in the last 2 decades than in the 1,400 years since Muhammad. And it's been estimated that up to 1/3 of them have had a Jesus dream. Now here's now I'm a skeptic. So what's the corroboration? How do I know this isn't just something in their heads? Well, first of all, it wouldn't be likely that a devout Muslim in a Muslim country is going to want to have a dream about the Jesus of Christianity that could possibly lead them to Islamic apostasy and maybe a death sentence. So there's no incentive for them to have a dream like this. But here's the corroboration. What is not happening is that these people are not going to sleep as a Muslim, having a dream where they meet Jesus and waking up as a Christian. That's not what happens. The dreams point them towards something external that corroborates that this is true. I'll give you an example. There's a woman named Noor, mother of 8 children in Cairo, Muslim. She has a Jesus dream. Jesus appears to her. They're walking along a lakeshore. She's mesmerized by Jesus. She said, I feel the love and the grace and I've never felt anything like this. All my shame was gone. And I said, Jesus, why are you appearing to me? I'm just a poor Muslim mother of 8 children. And Jesus said, I love you, Noor. I've given everything for you. I died for you. And he said, tomorrow, my friend will explain everything you need to know about why I met with you. And she said, your friend, who's your friend? And Jesus gestured toward a man who was walking with them along the lakeshore, but she had been so mesmerized by Jesus, she didn't notice this guy. And he said, my friend will tell you. She wakes up. The next day, she goes to the crowded marketplace. It's Friday afternoon in Cairo, the crowded marketplace in Cairo. And she sees that man from her dream. And she goes up to him. And she said, you're the one. He said, whoa, what are you talking about? You're the guy. Same glasses, same face, same clothes. You're the one. He said, wait a minute. Did you have a dream about Jesus last night? He said, yes. Turned out he was an underground church planter. He didn't want to go to the crowded marketplace in Cairo on Friday afternoon. It's chaotic. He went because he felt God had an assignment for him. But here's the key. Here's the key. What does he do? He pulls Noor aside. He opens the Bible. And for 3 hours, he shares the story of Jesus with her. That's the corroboration. That's the corroboration. It points to something external from the dream. So another example, and there's hundreds of these cases. I interviewed for my book the world's leading expert on this. He said, Lee, I could pick up the phone right now. I could call Kuwait. I could call Saudi Arabia. I could call Afghanistan. I'll give you 5 more stories right now. This is sweeping the Middle East. And so I'll give you another story. There was a guy who hated Jewish people. He grew up in a refugee camp. His goal in life, kill as many Jewish people as he could. And he said, I want to join Hamas, the terrorist organization. And so he arranged to meet with the leaders of Hamas so he could join Hamas. So he's walking down the street in Jerusalem, and all of a sudden his path is blocked by Jesus, a vision of Jesus. And Jesus looks at him and he says, Omar, this is not the life I have for you. This is not how I want you to live your life. I want you to turn around and I want you to go home. He's shocked by it. What does he do? He turns around, he goes home. Later that day, he lived in an apartment building. Later that day, a Christian family was moving into the apartment across the hall. And he goes over to meet these new residents, and he says, I just had this experience. What does it mean? And so this Christian neighbor now opens the Bible and shares the gospel of Jesus Christ, leads Omar to faith in Christ, and today Omar is an underground church planter in the Middle East. So what do you do with that? What do you do? And by the way, one other thing, get this. Sometimes you can go to Egypt, go to Cairo, and pick up the newspaper, and you'll see an ad. And the ad says, call this number, and we'll tell you about the man in white you met in your dream last night. That's how common this is. It's personally, I think this is maybe one of the greatest spiritual awakenings of history that's going on right now. It's fascinating. We had it in our church in Houston. I volunteer in our church, and we had a woman who, we have a lot of oil industry things from the Middle East. And there was a woman who, when she was about 16 years old, living in a closed country in the Middle East, had a Jesus dream. And I said to her, I said, what was it? What did he say? She said, oh, no. It wasn't what he said. It was who he is. He said it was like a motion picture was projecting, and I felt the love and the grace and the compassion of Jesus. And she said it stirred my soul, but I didn't know what to do with it. And then she got married to a guy, and he got transferred to Houston, Texas in the oil industry. And then she had another dream. And in this dream, she says, I was in a pool of water up to my waist. And there was a man with me, and he had a book, and he was weeping. I have no idea what this means. Well, she met a woman who was a member of our church, and Easter was coming up. And she invited her husband was out of town, said, why don't you come to church? She said, okay, I'd like to go to a church. She came to our church. We're waiting for the service to begin. She's sitting on the aisle. She sees the man who was with her in the pond in her dream. That's the guy from my dream. His name is Alan Splawn. You know what he does? He's our pastor of baptism. She didn't know what baptism was. She comes to faith in Jesus Christ, and then she goes into our pond with water up to her waist, and Alan, reading scripture and weeping at the moment, baptizes her in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. And you know what? I told that story at our church just a couple of weeks ago, and Alan came up to me later and said, do you know the rest of the story? I said, no, what's the rest of the story? He said, we have all these we have a laundry service that gives us fresh towels for all the people we baptize. So we have all these white towels. So when people are baptized, we got this stock of white towels and people can dry off. So he said, I go to baptize her. I couldn't find any towels. There were no white towels. Oh, wait a minute. There's one towel, but it's purple. Never seen a purple towel here, but okay, that's great. It'll work. So he gives it to her to dry off. She bursts into tears. She said, in my dream, there was a purple towel. Friends, I don't know what you do with this unless there really is a realm beyond what we can see and touch, that there really is a God. The Bible is true when it tells us this stuff.
Amazing. What do you say to people, Lee, that maybe are just still considering faith, still trying to kind of sort things out spiritually?
Yeah.
How would you encourage them based on all that you've seen and read, and what would you speak into their life?
I'd say do what I did. Check it out. Check it out. I'm a skeptic. I was an atheist. And I would encourage anybody that has doubts, has questions, do the research. I mean, my books, by the way, they're all free at the local library. But there's a lot of other stuff out there. Do due diligence. Investigate it. You can check into the reliability of the accounts about the resurrection of Jesus. Unbelievable, the reliability. When I was a student at Yale Law School, my hero was a guy considered the greatest lawyer in the world. He won more cases as a defense attorney, more murder cases than anybody in history. And I idolized this guy. He was knighted twice by Queen Elizabeth. He became a Supreme Court member of his country. But he, like me at the time, was a skeptic about the resurrection until he spent 2 years of his life taking his monumental legal skill and applying it to the historical record. And I'll recite to you one sentence he wrote to summarize his conclusion. He said, I say unequivocally that the evidence for the resurrection of Jesus Christ is so overwhelming that it compels acceptance by proof, which leaves absolutely no room for doubt. This from the greatest lawyer in the world. And the funny thing is, I told that story. I just moved to California. I was a teaching pastor with Rick Warren at Saddleback Church, and we just moved to California. This is 25 years ago. And I told that story, and a woman came up to me afterwards, and she said, hey, I'm your new neighbor. We live 2 houses down. We haven't met yet. I said, oh, it's great. Good to meet you. She said, yeah. And that guy you talked about, Sir Lionel Luckhoo, that's my brother. And she showed me some of his private papers of his research that he had done into the resurrection of Jesus Christ. I mean, that was just one of those weird coincidences.
Amazingly. And it's not only like what you research, what you see in your book, it's what you've experienced in your own life. You're in a room full of people that many of whom have had transforming spiritual experiences.
Yeah.
Whether the things we can explain or can't explain, here's what we know. That we received forgiveness that we can't explain, that we received God's grace and mercy that we don't deserve, and that God has walked with us. He's been with us. That's his promise, is that he will be with you in no matter what you face, no matter what you go through. Not that you won't have problems or have issues, but that he will be with you.